Welcome to a survey of the Gospel of Luke. Today, we pick up in the 16th chapter of Luke, where we have two parables about rich men. Both these parables should be seen in the context of Jesus' Nazareth manifesto, found in Luke 4:18 to 19. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because He has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set free those who are oppressed, to proclaim the favorable year of the Lord. Jesus came to help the blind, born, broken, and bruised. Luke in his gospel shows that Jesus specially directs this message for the outcast, the poor, the widows, and the marginal in society. Let us see how the first parable in Luke 16 speaks to this mission. In Luke 16:1 to 14, we read, "Now he was also saying to the disciples, there was a rich man who had a manager, and this manager was reported to him as squandering his possessions. And he called to him and said to him, 'What is this that I hear about you? Give an accounting of your management, for you can no longer be manager.' The manager said to himself, 'What shall I do, since my master is taking away the management away from me? I am not strong enough to dig. I am ashamed to beg. I know what I shall do, so that when I am removed from the management, people will welcome me into their homes.' And he summoned each one of his master's debtors, and he began saying to the first, 'How much do you owe my master?' And he said, 100 measures of oil. And he said to him, 'Take your bill and sit down quickly and write 50. Then he said to another, 'How much do you owe?' And he said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said to him, 'Take your bill and write 80. And his master praised the unrighteous manager because he had acted shrewdly. For the sons of this age are more shrewd in relation to their own kind than the sons of light. And I say to you, make friends for yourselves by measures of wealth of unrighteousness, so that when it fails, they will receive you into the eternal dwellings. He who is faithful in very little thing is faithful also in much. And he who is unrighteous in a very little thing is unrighteous also in much. Therefore, if you are not being faithful in the use of unrighteous wealth, who will entrust the true riches to you? And if you have not been faithful in the use of which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate one and love the other, or else he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth." Now the Pharisees, who were lovers of money, were listening to all these things and were scoffing at him. This is called the parable of the unjust steward, and it confuses many people because Jesus appears to commend an embezzler. The fullest impression of the parable is, however, shaped by a few important missing details that are assumed knowledge by the gospel writer and by those to whom Jesus recounts the parable. These missing details involve common practices of the day around the laws of interest and the laws of steward mediation in business dealings. While it would be too difficult in this context to unpack every detail, we will try to give the gist of the matter. First, we have the command of Torah in Exodus 22 verse 25 saying, "If you lend money to my people, to the poor among you, you are not to act as a creditor to him. You shall not charge him interest." Even though the criteria for interest-free loans is that one must be both a fellow Jew and poor, it was common legal practice in Judaism to require all loans to fellow Jews to be interest-free. Because this discourages loans, it was a common practice to tag on interest-like increases in a loan by wording the contract just the right way to conceal from the legal eye the true nature of the agreement. If one borrows the economic equivalent of 80 quantities of wheat, the loan contract might simply promise the payment 100 quantities of wheat without direct reference to the original borrowing amount. Both the practice and the percentages represented in the story were common. The decision to cut that amount was not theft, but a righteous restoration to the proper amount in light of Jewish oral law. As for stewards, they are awarded full legal representation of their master, save for one caveat. Since it is illegal for a master to command his steward to do anything in violation of Jewish law, any illegal or unrighteous act by a steward was on his own head. If therefore a steward wrote tricky loans that conceal interest, he had the full legal authority to eliminate such interest at his will. Such discounts would be regarded as coming out of his own pocket, and their forgiveness would be judged as an act of righteousness before God. He would increase not only his own reputation as a righteous man, but also that of his master. So, in this parable, the rich man first decides to fire his steward because of mismanagement of finances. When the steward comes to the knowledge that he will soon be fired, he begins to make some decision in order to secure himself in the next stage of life. He decides to win the good graces of all his master's debtors by returning those portions of the loans that would have been regarded as unlawful interest had the contract simply been written differently. He raises his own reputation without mishandling his master's goods and makes his master look good in the process. The master is impressed. It was shrewd maneuvering. So, what does this mean for us? We all have earthly things at our disposal, be it wealth, time, talent, or energy. As stewards of God, we are called to managing all these things for the benefit of our Heavenly Master. They belong to God, but He puts them in our hands. Now, just as the steward in the parable was going to be fired soon and would lose control of all the money he had to steward, we are going to die someday, and we are going to lose control over all we have been given to steward. Knowing this, just as the unjust steward uses what was at his disposal to make friends that will welcome him in the next stage of earthly life, we should use our God-given resources to prepare the way for our eternity. We want our Heavenly Master to see what we did with what He gave us and to approve, saying, "Well done, good and faithful servant." The devotional, practical, and personal application of this parable challenges us to use our money, gifts, talents, and our time for God's kingdom. Are you a good steward of what God has given you? After this parable, Jesus tells a second parable in Luke 16 about a rich man. He says, "Now there was a rich man, and he habitually dressed in purple and fine linen, joyously living in splendor every day. And a poor man named Lazarus was laid at his gate, covered with sores and longing to be fed with the crumbs which were falling from the rich man's table. Besides, even the dogs were coming and licking his sores." At the beginning of the parable, you see the rich man living as luxuriously as possible, with no regard for the beggar laying at his gate, looking longingly and uselessly at the crumbs from the man's table. The man will give him nothing. They both die and face a complete reversal of fortunes in their eternal state. The beggar, Lazarus, could not have it better. He is in Abraham's bosom in paradise, as the Jewish people at that time understood it. The rich man could not have it worse. He is in torment of Hades, separated by a great gulf between him and Lazarus, looking longingly across to him, hoping for a mere drop of water from Lazarus' finger to ease the agony of the flames. He can be given no aid. The rich man has a great concern for his 5 brothers. He says to Abraham, "I beg you, Father, that you send him," meaning Lazarus, "to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, in order that they may warn them, so that they will not also come to this place of torment." Abraham tells the rich man, "They have Moses and the prophets. Let them hear them." The rich man responds, "No, Father Abraham. If someone goes to them from the dead, they will repent." Abraham replies, "If they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, they will not be persuaded even if someone rises from the dead." The rich man imagines that if some supernatural thing happens, then this might penetrate the selfishness of his brothers. But Abraham imagines otherwise. Supernatural things are all around them, like the sacred scriptures. More miracles won't penetrate a heart insensible to miracles. He who is faithful with little gets more. He who is faithless with little, even that will be stripped away from him. The most striking element of this story is the picture it gives of eternal reward and punishment. We will pay for our faithless lives. We will be rewarded for our faith in life. Torment and blessing awaits us. God sees all. All will be accounted for us or against us. Did we believe? Did we validate the profession which a life well lived? Having come to faith, did we prove that faith through our lives? This parable tells us the truth about hellfire, eternal damnation, eternal retribution, and eternal torment. Perhaps the worst thing about the eternal state is that the rich man has a memory. It will torment him for eternity that he could have lived his life in a better way, heeding the scriptures and sharing the heart of God for his fellow men. Thus, this parable is also a good illustration of a man who would not steward his riches for Jesus' kingdom mission. He absolutely cared nothing at all about the people God cares about. The challenge of this great teaching is this: who is the Lazarus in your life? Will you be a faithful steward and participant with Jesus in the implementation of his mission? Will you be used by him to give sight to the blind, freedom to the bound, and healing to the broken and bruised people in this world? Luke 10 verse 30 to 37 asks this question of us again in the parable of the Good Samaritan. In Jesus' story, a man is robbed and beaten and left for dead. First, a priest and then a Levi comes by and looks at this man. Both pass by him. There are many reasons why they might forsake him and justify it to themselves. But the power point to the story comes when a man, despised by the Jews, comes by. We read in Luke 10 verse 33-35, "But a Samaritan who was on a journey comes upon him, and when he saw him, he felt compassion and came to him and bandaged up his wounds, pouring oil and wine on them. And he put him on his own beast and bought him at an inn and took care of him. On the next day, he took out 2 denarii and gave it to the innkeeper and said, 'Take care of him, and whatever more you spend when I return, I will pay you.'" We see this contrast often in life. We see those who use their time and money and blessing only for themselves. We also see those who consider their time and gifting and money to be just as much as others as their own. So we find the challenge against that Luke continually puts before us. Will you join Jesus on this mission and use your time, money, energies, and blessing in accordance with his will? Or will you consider all those things your own and spend it all on your own wanton pleasures? Lay your whole life and all you have at the disposal of Jesus today.